Good morning, students. Last lecture we have seen different definitions of literary criticism, the nature of literary criticism. Today we'll study the origin of literary criticism. It is quite difficult to determine the origin of literary criticism. It can be traced as per follows. We have Rasfors. It was a kind of group of people who used to recite epic poems. Epic means epic means a long poem as like Ramayana, Mahabharata, Bible, Troy, Beowulf. These people were found in group. Those people were poet as a reciter as well as a critic. Then we have a poetry of Homer and Hesiod. These are Greek ancient poets who acted a composer as well as a critic. Their poetry was based on educational purpose and their mean was instructive as well as you can find their poetry as a delightful. As like when we see Ram Lila, which is based on Ramayana, we understand how should we behave as like Ram or Ravan. So it educates us, it instructs us how to what to do, what not to do, what is our duty towards society, or how can we uh, try to just live in a society that is instructive. Again, we like watching those serials which are based on Ramayana because it is delightful too. Then we have few Greek and classical poets as well as critics. It was their cultural activity to to recite a poem. They were not doing it for academic purpose, or it was not a pedagogical, or they were not getting benefit through their poetry. It was not institutionalized. So their criticism was not academic, pedagogical, or institutionalized. It was more interpretive. They used to interpret the literary work of art. They used to analyze it, and it was less evaluative or judgmental. The next slide, we have we know that there are Plato and Aristotle who are used to be called as a critic, but before Plato, we have different poets, or we have studied. There are different poets. They were critics as well. Their poetry was a kind of criticism on a society. We have a Xenophonus who has actually anticipated Plato. He raised questions against Homer and Hesiod because Homer and Hesiod who has portrayed gods in a wrong way. As like when you see that in Ramayana, when Sita was kidnapped by Ravan, Ram used to cry in a or Ram cried. It was shown Ram cried in a forest. So being a god, how can he cry? So this is misinterpretation. This is misrepresentation, where Xenophonus in, countered or attacked first time. Then we have a Plato and Aristotle. Plato, in his book *On Phaedrus and Republic*, he attacked on the poetry because according to him, it is emotional, it is based on feelings, it is not uh, rational, or it is not good for a society. It may bring anarchy in a society. Whereas his disciple Aristotle, he wrote book Poetics, who actually can be called as a real critic, who has given poetry a very strong ground, and he counter in his theory mimesis, and in his writing he is the one who counterattack to the Plato. He is the one who formulated number of theories. He is the one who laid base to the literary criticism. He is the one in whose writing actually we can see the seeds of different literary theories and different uh, notions which are present nowadays. Then we have a medieval criticism. It was religious. It was a tradition of hermeneutics. Hermeneutics is a branch of knowledge which interpret Bible. Okay, so same as like you people can see the different abhang written by sons, and their interpretation of Bhagavad Gita. Okay, it is a kind of criticism because they are not only interpreting those situation or incidents which are there in Mahabharata or Ramayana, they are actually teaching people how to live life. How can what kind of problems may be there in our life, and how can we tackle them? So we have Saint Augustine and Thomas Aquinas, who were practicing such kind of things, religious things. We were propagating the religious concepts to the common people. We have neoclassical criticism later on, who laid emphasis on objectivity. Objectivity is a kind of fact of being based on facts and not influenced by personal beliefs or feelings. It is a kind of, they were giving importance to the unities, unity of action, time, unity of place. So their emphasis on coherence, rules and regulations, which is laid down by Plato and Aristotle. They gave importance to the order and grandeur of a literary work of art. They were giving importance to nobility of literary work of art, and again, you can find their diction, which was kind of pedantic, where Greek words were joining English words too. So Romanticism, which is followed by Neoclassicism, is a great reaction to Neoclassicism, where subjectivity was more important. Subjectivity means the quality of being based on influenced by personal feelings, taste, or opinion. It was giving importance to freedom from norms. It was giving importance to imagination or expression of thoughts. You can just, I can give you one example. Look at your family, your father, your mother, and yourself. Your father thinks about yourself and your future with a objectivity or uh, objectivity based reason. So they will find a kind of unity in yourself. They will say you go to college regularly, attend all lectures. You should not talk with your such kind of friends. You should have a intellectual friends. So they will lay down various rules and regulations upon you, as like you should study hard, you should wake up early in morning, you should exercise, as those are the rules regulations which were laid down by their ancestors. They will see a kind of grandeur and nobility within you. If you see something vulgar, if you say something vulgar, they will scold you. They'll say that your language should be good, but you, what do you want? You wish to give importance to yourself, that is subjectivity. They'll say this is my life, let me decide what to do. You want freedom from their norms. So whatever is told by your parent or whatever is stated by them, you will take it as a challenge. So you will give importance to imagination and expression of your thoughts. So language doesn't matter for you. So this is what the neoclassical and romanticism is. Your father is a neoclassical, whereas you are a romantic. Your father wish all these qualities should be there within you, whereas you, being a romantic, you want freedom. So the same notion you can find in literary criticism. Then we have a Victorian criticism. In Victorian era, there were several changes in socio-economic, socio-political conditions. Now literature is a mirror of society. At the same time, criticism is something, a critic on literature. So you will find that there are different trends in criticism too, because literature was changing. It was a period when you can notice rise of democracy and progress of science. People started giving importance to their rights. People started about a kind of diplomacy where all are contributing to each other. And we have a progress of science to Victorian dilemma. This is very interesting thing. Victorian dilemma is a kind of thing when the book Origin of Species on 24th November 1859, the book was published, and which was written by Charles Darwin. The book was focusing on the origin of species, and it was saying that it is a amoeba, the first organism, and because of amoeba, or because of the adaptation in amoeba, we have all living things here and there. So this is a challenge to our concept that, as like in India we say we are created by Brahma, or in Bible we are son and we are daughter of Eshu. So this was a direct attack on our conception. So we were not in a position to understand that what is right. So those people who were giving importance to God, they became pessimistic because science was progressing, and those people who were giving importance to science, they were optimistic because again science was progressing. So we have a Victorian dilemma. The same notion which is there in literature was reflected in criticism too. So industrialization and colonization, again, these are important factors which you can see in Victorian era, where because of such kind of industrialization and progress in science, people started challenging to biblical notion of creation. As I told you before, if you are a student of science and somebody is saying Indradev or Indra God is behind this rain and behind this wind, you will laugh at it. You'll say it is not possible. It is a science. At the same time, your grandmother will scold you. She may say it is, though it is a science, but there is a God and who is responsible for this thing. So this is what the conflict is. The same conflict you can see in Victorian criticism. Then the Victorian criticism was followed by modern criticism, where you have a complex and elliptical experiments with literature. People started doing experiments with forms, with structure, with the and rules and regulations laid down by the ancestors, and they started complex elliptical experiments which were never thought by the ancient people. They were behind the avant the great. It means new and experimental ideas and methods in arts, music, or literature. They were radical in their aesthetic views, language, expression, and technical innovation. You can see that there was a widespread disappointment with the traditional methods of literary analysis, and new ways of literary analysis were at the emergence. So this is how you can trace literary criticism right from pre-classical period to modern period. Henceforth we'll see and we'll discuss each and every period in detail. Thank you very much.